Hello and welcome to the Unusual Stories podcast. My name is Wojciech Salski, I'll be your host for today. And as per usual, before we start, may I just remind you, the best way to support the podcast, and it really means a lot to me, is either clicking the link below and subscribing to the channel, whether on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts or Spotify. Sharing it with a friend, that probably goes a long way as well, especially that word of mouth is probably the best, most efficient advertising. And of course, if you'd like to support me either financially or just send me an email saying, hey dude, you're doing a good job, why don't you continue? Please do. That's wonderful, and thank you so much for the support so far, and onwards and upwards, may I just say. So before we start, I also just wanted to remind you, if you've not yet, please click the link below if you'd like to download the book, which is this one, which is my second book, about which I'll actually do a separate episode in the weeks to come. I was talking with a friend of mine that maybe he will be interviewing me for a change, which didn't happen before, and it made me wonder, that could be an actually interesting thing to do, because oftentimes I share with you what I think is relevant to share, whereas a friend of mine who's an avid listener as well, and he knows what I'm talking about here, might have an insight into what you, my dear listener, would like to learn. So we will get back to that, may I say. In terms of today, I have a very exciting book for you, something that I've already thought about before, a couple years back, and I've never gotten to actually share it with you. And so I've reread it. By now I read it 3 times. It's called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and it was written in 1920s. And if you've not heard about it before, unfortunately I only have the online version with me today. I will put the link below for you to check it out. The really big advantage to this book is that it's short. And I know how difficult for many people it is to find time to read books that are, let's say longer than 200 pages. This one is definitely one of the ones that you can tackle even if you do have a limited amount of time. So I would argue it's worthy. And on Audible, you can get it for 4 hours of listening, which is a short time, If you commute to work and back, you'll probably be done within a week. That was the experience for me. Although I do read much more than an average person, I assume. So yeah, let's jump straight into it. First of all, I encountered it quite out of the blue in 2020. Back in that year and the year before, I've read a lot of spiritual related books. This is when the letting go showed up in my life, which you all readers and listeners of this podcast love so much, and the Tibetan book of living and dying. And then also, one of my friends suggested that I should read Siddhartha. And mostly, he suggested it because I was interested in writing. I was at the time writing my first book. And he said, you should try the Siddhartha and Hermann Hesse because of his beautiful way of writing. And it is very poetic. I do agree. It's one of the more beautiful books that I've had a chance to read, both in terms of what it offers, in terms of its content, as well as the poetical values surrounding it, and just the way it's written. So I've encountered it then. I really fell in love. I actually bought myself a copy, which is still in my house back home in Poland. And I've read it again 2 years ago. I've suggested it to a friend. And then I thought, well, this is probably a great idea to share it with you guys, because I know how much you appreciate the episodes I've done on letting go and on Tibetan book of living and dying. So looking at the stats and seeing that even though it's been 2 years now and people are still re-listening to those particular episodes, which I will link below obviously for those that haven't, it seems to me that I should direct my attention a little bit more towards the books that you find relevant to you. So here we are. What is the book about? I'll just give you a quick, snapshot without having many spoilers. If you know the stories, the traditional stories of Buddhism, this book will not be surprising for you, maybe, because in many ways it is portraying the Buddhist traditional perception and perspective on achieving Buddhahood. This is basically the outline of the story. So it's a self-discovery story of this young man, Siddhartha, who with his friend Govinda leaves the house and leaves his town, and they embark on a journey which initially is supposed to be a spiritual journey, and then it takes its twists and turns. But overall, it ends up very much so a spiritual journey. And so this story of becoming a Buddha, or achieving Buddhahood, as the tradition goes, is what Siddhartha goes through. And he encounters all kind of people, all kind of situations in his life. And the biggest quality I find in the way the story is written is because it is from the perspective of that young person who then grows older as well, and from the perspective of what's going on inside of him, the beautiful descriptions of his experiences as he goes through them offer us insight into the universality of our existence. And I'll elaborate on that in a second. So yeah, I don't want to give you too much of the story. It's a beautiful one. There are moments when it's quite sad. There are moments when it's quite happy. But for the most part, it treats on this idea of what is important in life and how do we overcome challenges, how do we perceive what happens with us. And oftentimes it comes back to this very major focus on the Buddhist teachings surrounding the idea that ultimately everything happens as it should, and we often do not know what will be the outcome of what is going on. We can only assume, but then the world has its way of, or God, if you will, has its way of leading us forward through that. So what resonated with me in particular as I reread it this time, and as I said, this is the third time, so definitely over time our experiences will change and our perspectives will change. Me, Wojtek from 2024, is somewhat like, but probably not as near as I would expect it to be, to Wojtek from 2022 or 2020. So my experiences back then and my thoughts back then might not be resonant with my thoughts and experiences right now, right? We do learn and grow, we experience different situations, and we go through the cycle of life in that regard. So what resonated with me the most, and I'll give you some ideas here, and I'll also elaborate on some of them that really touched my heart deeply, is first of all this idea of leaving the world behind, and not in a sense of alienating yourselves, rather allowing yourself a space to sort of become a sideline observant to what is going on around you and in the world. So almost like either putting on a pair of shades, a pair of shades onto your nose, or maybe like putting a veil of somewhat a veil of maybe self-control and perspective, distancing yourself, that's a good word, from what is going on around us and to us, because in many ways we cannot really change some of the experiences we will go through, but we do have the opportunity every time something happens to us to choose how we react to it. And this also lies at the very basic foundational level of the teachings from Buddhism, that it is all up to you how you react to what happens to you. And so our main hero of the story goes through different turbulations and often remains unwavered by them, sort of almost like on the sideline, just observing and being interested to see what happens with that, instead of maybe jumping to conclusions or being very upset or being very excited as well, which is an interesting thing. I took a note here about this trend of mindfulness, right? If you think about it, I'm also a part of this trend. I mean, for whatever reason, in 2020, I've decided to start a podcast, and I have not necessarily planned what the podcast will focus on at the start. It's sort of organically evolved, but I do feel it's very much so about taking care of yourself. We talk about things here that are supposedly gonna help us become better people, and also to become more mindful of how we are in the world. This is the philosophy, at least, that is helping me to grow, to observe myself more deeply, and to be able to discern whenever I've sort of swayed off a path that I've considered to be a righteous one, the right one. And an interesting thing is, at some point in the teachings that I've encountered, both in Secular Buddhism podcast, of which I've mentioned also, and I will put it below if you'd like to learn more about Buddhism per se, but also from this book and a few others, is this idea that you cannot really strive to become more mindful, because if you do make it about the striving to become more mindful, you're just jumping onto a different treadmill of life, right? So, for example, I consider myself quite an ambitious person. It can be a blessing and a curse, obviously. It depends on the situation. The blessing part of it is I get to achieve more of the goals that I set for myself than maybe a person that wouldn't be as motivated. At the same time, the curse is I often find myself feeling inadequate, or feeling like I don't have enough time, enough energy to do something even though I really want to. And it can become a sort of a hindrance, really, and definitely take a toll on one's health and stress. And similarly with this idea of meditating, people say, oh, you should try meditation, you should meditate. And then when you do meditate, if you've tried before, you will notice that there are stages of sort of attitude that you go through as you try it. And one of them certainly is this idea of, oh, I'm doing the right thing right now. Like, I'm gonna learn how to be more relaxed. Like, I'm gonna power through this meditation, and this is gonna be the most mindful, relaxed meditation of my life. The mere fact that we put these attachments and expectations onto ourselves means we're not allowing meditation to take place, because by its nature, by default, a meditative state is one free of both attachments and thoughts that would hijack our attention. So similarly to going to sleep, with which I struggle a lot these days, especially that I have a lot on my plate at the moment, is you cannot really fall asleep if you're forcing yourself to do so. And I am certain you've experienced that before. Everyone did. Everyone does, really. And it's such a paradox, you need to let go of your need to fall to sleep. You need to kind of refocus on something else. Something that helps me is I count my blessings and sort of do myself a gratitude list, and that soothes me slowly towards that sleep. But the moment I catch myself thinking, oh, am I falling asleep already? I am awake again, you know? And similarly to this meditation, right? If you sit down to meditate and you sit down with an agenda related to this meditation, you have not really meditated. You just sat there tensing internally and potentially even physically to achieve a certain goal. And the teachings that I perceive through this book and others is the journey is the goal, right? So meditation in itself is a goal. And to do so, you need to let go of your preconceived notions of how it should be. And so this was a big part of this book, which I hope you will enjoy and explore, that many things in life happen to us and for us when we let go of the outcome we would like from them. And this is not to say you should not have goals, and this is not to say you should not ask and try. You know, even in the scriptures from the Bible, it says, ask and you shall be given, seek and you shall find. And I do believe that to be true. But there is also a part of it, an aspect of it, of faith, which basically says, I've done my part, and now I'm letting the world, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, to take action and help me achieve that thing, whether it is a state of calm or whether it is achieving a goal you've set for yourself. So I might share with you in a few weeks the experiences of the past few for me. I feel like right now I'm still in the middle of it, so I need to first sort of put it into words and then I'll share with you. But this is definitely what's been happening with me in terms of my feelings that whenever I let go of the outcome, I find myself much closer to it, if not I actually get it. Whereas the stress and the anticipation of it being fulfilled is what causes me often a lot of strain and somewhat stops from achieving that. And you can relate that to desperate people in relationships. I bet you've encountered someone that was so bent on dating you that they just scared you away. And similarly, we scare away sleep when we focus so much on it, and we scare away the state of calm in meditation when we try to make it our best meditation. Secondly, I'd like to talk about the power of karma, right? And obviously, you know, this is just one of the ideas. It's a philosophical sort of a thought. It does not mean that this is the only way to perceive it. I would argue that there is not really one right way in nature, because as you see, nature is quite an unusual and diverse. So are our thoughts and philosophical contemplations. But the power of karma, which is really presented in the book quite extensively, basically talks about this idea that what you give out, you get. What you share with the world multiplies and comes back to you. And I do believe, and believe is a key word here, because it's very difficult to prove this, or at least I've not found someone to be able to prove it in terms of science, let's say. But I do believe that to be true. I do see in my life, and I do observe that in the life of those around me and in the world at large, that for the most part, whatever we do give out to the world, whatever we share with others, either if it's our generosity, our love, our hate, our misfortune, whatever we put out there, we get. And an interesting sort of study I've heard about treated about people's expectations of going to another place. So from what I remember, they asked a couple of people as they were going abroad, and then when they were coming back, what are their expectations of the place? And based on their expectations, it seemed like they've actually gotten what they asked for. And it does make sense, if you think about it. So one of the examples was there was a lady who was quite in distress at the moment, quite unhappy about her life. And she heard on the news that when she goes to that particular place, I don't remember which one it was, that there will be a lot of people on the street, asking her for money and troubling her. So she will stay in the hotel. She doesn't want to go out there. It's dangerous. It's, unpleasant. People are unpleasant there. And so she went there and she had that experience. She stayed in the hotel. She didn't see the country outside the hotel. She came back and she answered the questions again. And she said, yeah, I didn't go out of the hotel because there are those people and they ask for money and whatnot. And obviously one could argue she doesn't know if that's true or not because she didn't check it. But she sort of confirmed her expectation. And because of the expectation, she didn't give herself a chance to even challenge the expectation itself, right? And then you can approach it from a different standpoint, that I'm going to this country, I've heard rumors about this or that, but until I experience it myself, I don't judge, I don't have any expectations, and also my choices will greatly influence what happens there, right? So for example, another person might go there and be very open to experience whatever this place has to offer. They will encounter some pleasant people and they will encounter some unpleasant people. Maybe they will get in trouble. Maybe they will get into a great space and maybe meet the love of their life or whatever. And this freeing state of mind of no expectation, or at least being open for our preconceived notions to be challenged, allows the power of karma to be on your side rather than work against you. And that's how I perceive it. Obviously it will be different for everyone, and ultimately it comes back to what we said earlier. It seems, at least according to the Buddhist tradition, that you are in charge of how you react to the world around you. This is what being mindful about your choices or being skillful at navigating the world seems to be. And I wouldn't encourage you to go into any area that is war-ridden currently just with an optimistic view that you're going to have a great time there. Of course, there are some precautions we need to take. But the bottom line here, I think, is if you're kind to people, people will be kind to you in general. If you're nasty to people, people will be nasty to you in general. And this is potentially a bigger topic to explore in a full episode, but I do believe that for myself to be true. And so I try to treat others the way I would like to be treated, believing that this golden rule that, talks about this extensively, to treat others as you would like to be treated, works for my benefit. Because I don't want to end up in a situation when, because of my previous choices, I'm in trouble. And it is similarly with this power of karma, that when there are opportunities for me to do the good deed, I try to do the good deed, hoping, if anything else, that the world will not be a worse place because I was here. And that's quite a thing, I think it's one thing to try to fix the world, and to a certain degree, who are we to know what to fix and how to fix it? It's quite arrogant to think you know how to fix the world. But it's another thing not to contribute towards the misery of this world. And I think that's something every one of us could do. So finally, before I go to the invitation for you and a challenge, let's say, for this week, the book treats very interestingly on the power of patience and humility. So very early on in the book, our Siddhartha, our hero, is taught how to fast, how to wait, and I think how to fast and how to wait, right? And there are moments when he re-enters, let's say, the big world and tries to find his footing in living with, a local merchant and so forth. And when he's asked what does he know to do, he says he knows how to fast and how to wait. He knows how to be patient. And the merchant obviously points out, well, that's quite useless. No one's going to pay you to wait, and no one's going to pay you to fast. But Siddhartha points out that because he's able to fast, he doesn't have the necessity of earning money. And obviously this is very simplified. It's not like if you learn how to fast 7 days a week, now you don't have to go to work anymore. In our day and age, you're probably likely that you still, even if you wouldn't eat, you still need some sort of support and some sort of activity. But the focus here is on the patience part and on the humility part and on the part of, yet again, letting go of what's going to happen, believing that it will be okay, that there will be a way for you to find your footing. And so, without further spoilers, the hero utilizes these qualities, these virtues of patience and humility to achieve goals seamlessly. It sort of just happens. And I guess for us here, for me especially from this book, this was once again a reminder that some things just need to take their time, and it's not up to us to decide when they happen and how they happen. We can just work towards them in humility and with patience, and have faith in this activity giving towards a better world for ourselves and for others. And so, in a way, it's a reminder as well for me to slow down a little bit. I think over the past few weeks, especially with the exams at uni, with applying for different jobs, with launching my second book, with recording new episodes for you guys with very interesting friends and interesting guests in general, I do drive myself quite intensely. And maybe to a certain degree, it's good to just be patient and ask yourself, well, you've done your work. Why don't you just relax now and wait to see what happens out of this work? So yeah. Finally, as I've mentioned briefly earlier, an interesting thing that pops up in the book is this idea of our universal human experience. And I say it with the deepest sincerity. I have no doubt that the troubles that you go through in life, someone else, if not everyone else, have gone through at some point in theirs. Of course, there are some dire circumstances, but even those dire circumstances are often quite universal across the board, across the world. And some people are more privileged, some people are less privileged, some people are born in places that are more hostile than others. but the universal experience of human on this world, and potentially on any other, if there are any, are the same emotions. The states might be different, but the emotions we feel and the tribulations we go through are very, very universal. And so this is not for us to sort of wave our hand and be like, oh, whatever, that's happening to them, but everyone goes through it, so I don't care. It is more to recognize the compassionate part of us and to be more open to appreciate and forgive those around us, their activity. And this brings me back to the episode I've done on forgive and let go, this idea of forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they're doing. That ultimately, as we said earlier, the only thing we have power over is the way we act. And so if someone offends me, unless I give that offense its due, it doesn't mean anything to me. I can make it hurtful for me by acknowledging it in a way, taking it in, or I can just say to myself internally, without even arguing, this doesn't include me. It's not true. Someone offends me and I just say, it's okay. They don't know what they're talking about. Maybe they're going through a very difficult time right now, and this is how they vent. Maybe someone hurt them so deeply that they had a feeling, the need, the urge to hurt. And of course, it's easier said than done, similarly to falling asleep when you really need to fall asleep, or meditating when you don't know how to do it. Everything is easier said than done, but it is worth striving for. And so my invitation for you this week is twofold, actually. My first invitation resonates with this point. It's if you are prone to react to people, to an offense, or if you are prone to argue with people, I would encourage you, I would invite you to try this practice, that whenever you are facing adversity, whenever someone offends you, whenever you feel the emergence of emotions because of someone's wrongdoing to you, give yourself a few seconds, 5 seconds even, breathe in deeply and ask yourself whether or not that's true. And if it isn't true, if you know it's not true, don't allow that person to aggravate you. Don't get into that argument. Don't raise your voice. Don't counter-argue their points, because that makes the argument real. Just let go. Accept that they might have just, had a bad day. And see the miracles. I really, I used to be much more arguing person that I am right now. And I'm really happy about the quality of relationships, especially with my family that I have right now. Obviously, we've matured all, but a big part of it was to recognize that it is up to me whether your offense will actually touch me. And secondly, a bit lighter invitation, and maybe more universal if you are lucky enough not to argue too much with people, is recognize what outcome in your life or what goal you're currently holding on to, striving for, and ask yourself whether you're not holding on to it too much, to the point, as we said with the sleeping or with meditating, that you're actually not allowing the universe to work its magic because you're so bent on getting it. And yet again, this might not be too easy, and you will have to do some soul searching, but oh hey, this is where we are, and this is what we do here, right? Ultimately, we are all stumbling in darkness, I think, of our own lives. So yeah, I would encourage you to have that soul searching, think about this one goal, and try and let it go. Whether by thinking about it in the morning and then agreeing to yourself that over the next whole day you will not think about it up until the next morning, or by praying about it and letting it go, or by simply just reminding yourself whenever you feel stressed or sort of aggravated about this idea that it's okay and it will happen as it should. And it might not be too easy, or it might not feel like anything is happening, but I promise you it is. It's just a matter of time. So do what you can and let God, universe, fate, whatever you believe in, deal with the details, basically. So yeah. Other than that, I hope you have an amazing week. I will be, giving you some updates here and there on how's it going with the interviews, and also about the exciting new book, and potentially a special episode about it. But for the most part, have a wonderful week. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.